Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you. I would say that there is as much uncertainty in Washington as I can ever recall. Uncertainty, of course, about who's going to win. It is, by all accounts, a very, very close race. Also, uncertainty about what is the process even by which we will go from the election to the inauguration of a new president on January 20th. We know that that will happen because that's how the Constitution lays things out. But because of the questions about American elections that Donald Trump and his followers have been raising for the last 4 years, there's an enormous amount of worry and trepidation about how they will respond to the results of anything other than Trump winning.
So if he does win, do you think that it will be a different world, both for the US and the rest of the West, at least?
I do believe that this would mark a very significant shift for the United States and for its allies, especially its partners in Europe. There's no question that Trump represents a big break with what has essentially been a foreign policy consensus among both Democratic and Republican officials for the last couple decades, and that a second Trump term would be quite different than a first Trump term, in that you would see him not so much surrounded by officials from the more traditional Republican elite, but from a new group of much more radical folks who would be eager to make bigger changes than Trump was able to accomplish in just one term.
His whole idea is America first. So how will that impact his relationship with NATO and NATO members and Europe?
Yeah, look, it's a very important question. Many of the people who served with Donald Trump inside his administration, like his former national security advisor, John Bolton, they believe that Trump in a second term will move to undermine NATO or to pull out of it altogether. To a certain extent, that depends upon the circumstances. My view is that he doesn't need to even legally try to pull out of NATO, which now requires a vote of Congress, and that would be very hard to get. But, does it undermine NATO to have the leader of its most important country essentially not agreeing to the core principle of NATO, which is its Article 5 guarantee of mutual self-defense? And so from my perspective, from day one of the Trump presidency, NATO is already significantly weakened because Putin and any other adversary of NATO understands that Article 5, rather than being unconditional, is now conditioned upon the whims of Donald Trump. And I'll tell you an anecdote from the book that my husband and I wrote about Trump called The Divider, in which his advisors early on in his presidential term in 2017, they were trying to get him to understand how NATO worked. As you know, he would often publicly misrepresent it. And they were explaining Article 5 to him. And he interrupted the briefing, according to our reporting. And he said, wait a minute, you're telling me that the United States should have to fight on behalf of Lithuania? There's no way at all that I'm going to fight on behalf of Lithuania. And I think that anyone in Europe who doesn't take that seriously should take that seriously. We've been talking all about Trump, but and that is a worrisome and bleak picture. It's also true that that represents at most, and not really, half of the United States. Part of the reason for this gridlock is because it's a very divided country, but it's not that there aren't millions and millions of Americans who have come together in a way that suggests a positive formula for how to counter these challenges to our country. And since Kάμala Harris became the nominee unexpectedly this summer, you have seen, I think, a real rallying both around her and around the idea that not only is a new generation of leadership needed in the United States, but, in particular, women really have stood up. And if she wins next week, it will be because of American women, including many Republican women, many older women who might not have in the past thought about supporting someone like Kamala Harris. There are millions of Americans and, you know, half of our states that are not simply going to, you know, accede to this, but it's a period of conflict and trouble inside the United States. There's no question about that.
Thank you so much, Susan. I so appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.